hurry. Hitting all the topics like a clothesline flurry. Turn up your speakers and hear them out. You can listen from your car, even on your couch. They too raw, who NXT? Handing out smackdowns, follow on IG. Plus, it's sponsored by TagMeADate. Go to YouTube and sub now for every update. It's all wrestling here. No safe space, now listen in. Time to hear from some of the greats. Behold the king. The king of kings. On your knees, dog. All hail.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the War Report podcast, brought to you by TagMeADate.com. It will be back. I promise. It will be back. We're just working on it. But we got another show. We have so much to cover. But most importantly, we have to start this off a little differently than we normally do. Because we got a little tidbit earlier that we have something coming to us that is long overdue. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give the floor to Eric so we can get an Eric rant that we haven't had in quite some time. And I have a feeling I know what it's about, and it may even correlate with Triple H.
All right, here
Eric,
we go.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay. Now, you guys know, and you viewers probably know by now, how I feel about the world title situation. Being that, to me, it never has and never will make sense to have more than one world champion in the same company. All right. That being said, Triple H comes out last night, says, Roman, whichever show you're drafted to in the draft, that show, you will remain undisputed Universal World Heavyweight Champion, whatever, Universal Champion. Then he introduces this new title, right? I'm not gonna go on the looks of it because that's a whole other story. I don't really give a shit about that.
I don't like it.
At this point, I'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
I'll get to that soon enough. My issue, though, is, okay, so Roman is still going to be the undisputed Universal Champion, being the bearer, I guess, at the time of two physical belts, even though it's representing, both of them, right? One whole champion. But now there's this new world title, despite what it may look like. It's basically yet another meaningless world title. It's a consolation prize. And also, I have this to say, do not give it to Cody Rhodes.
I was just going to say, that's Cody's belt, man. You already know it. It's the TNT
Rhodes.
title
that
all over again.
Undermines the entire thing, the entire storyline and struggle with him. Roman needs to be the one he beats if he does win the championship, not this consolation. Okay?
I gotta stop your rant for a second because I'm gonna fucking add to your rant.
Okay.
I gotta tell you, number one, I actually like the look of the new belt. I'm gonna get that out there right away. I think it looks more like the WCW World Heavyweight title than ever
definitely
before.
A nod to that, yeah.
And on that alone, I think it's worlds better than what we have currently. That's number one.
That is for sure.
That's number one. Number two, we also need to break down what Triple H had to say prior to ripping the cloth off and exposing the new belt, because they straight shit on Roman for the majority of that promo.
Wild.
So I want to go into that too. But I also want to say this. I don't think it's a consolation prize, and I don't think it's a meaningless fucking title. I know, and you've said it forever, there should be one belt, one champion. If you're going to have two separate brands and they're going to run separately, you need two world champions. One has to stay on SmackDown, one has to stay on Raw. What I do think they need to do is if we are still going to refer to Roman as the undisputed world heavyweight title, then I think you have to somehow figure out a way how to merge those two belts into one belt. You know what? I don't know how you do it, but come out with, even if you want, listen, it's great for marketing and you'll make more money on sales of belts. Debut another belt. Get rid of those two. And now you have one undisputed heavyweight championship title. And now you have this world heavyweight title on the other brand. I don't necessarily think that's a bad move. And we have figured out a way to split the belts from Roman in that aspect. So I want to get that out there. But I also want to dissect what Triple H had to say. And I will get to that. Eric, go ahead and continue.
Okay. So to continue, and you guys probably going to disagree with me harshly on this. All
well,
right?
we know I probably will. But
being what I just said, being what I, being as what I just said about the world titles and that situation, even when the big gold belt, which is basically what this is kind of modeled after, which is what you like about it, right? I assume. Because it kind of looks like the old WCW title.
I mean, that's a big part of it. I think it's a beautiful looking belt. I really do. So, I think it's the best looking belt WWE has put out there in a long time, in my opinion. It's
definitely been the best new one as far as world titles, definitely in a long time. That is for sure. Anyway, back to my point here. Back when the big gold belt, the world title, right, was on one show and the W was on the other, even then, whoever had that belt, to me, was a paper champion. I'm sorry. That didn't mean shit. The WWE title is the only title in WWE world title wise that matters and should matter. I'm sorry.
I don't agree. I don't agree. If you're going to have two separate brands, you have to have two significant world titles. Otherwise, the brand split means shit because you're going to have, let's say, Roman in this case, still on both shows. So, we complain, right? We complain about the draft and we say our feelings of not liking the draft is because they never stick to their own rules. Nobody ever stays on their one brand. They're constantly showing up on. So what's the fucking point?
Right.
We also said if they're going to do it the right way this time, then they have to stick to that and they have to keep it separate. Therefore, you need two different world champions. And I don't think one means anything less than the other, especially since Roman has had them both, because he has brought prestige to both of those titles. Love him or hate him, the guy is going almost 1,000 fucking days as our world heavyweight champion,
He's
the longest in the modern era.
Right.
So in that respect, you have to finally say Roman has brought prestige. Just like we could even argue and say Gunther has finally brought prestige to the Intercontinental belt. You know what I mean? But to me, it's one and the same.
And also, I do want to get to him later on too, because
we will.
And because I have a point at which I think everyone actually will agree with me on the point for Gunther. Anyway, back to this whole thing. Like, it's just that, look, I'm not trying to shit on like Mark Henry's incredible world title win, which I witnessed at your house back in the day at Night of Champions years ago. Or Christian's winning it finally, or Benoit, or that's for Cat, all those moments. But it's just that, okay, let me go back to the.
You're a traditionalist, and I can appreciate that. But you got to change with the times, my dude.
Right.
You became a Miz fan.
Let me go back to the original brand split. Remember when that happened before the first brand extension, right? And they had this draft. Flair had his guys, Vince had his guys, right? And they're doing this thing. At the time, Brock Lesnar was the champion who was going to go to both shows. Then later on in the year, he signed exclusively with Stephanie on SmackDown. Therefore, they created the other world title on Raw. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then they started to split it. But at the very beginning, sorry for my Peter Brady moment there. They did. I'm glad you got the reference too.
I got that. Yeah.
They did have one champion. I don't.
Yes,
although I don't recall him really defending it in that period, because I think
this
Brock,
is my point. This is my point. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You want to have one champion, but you want the brand split to mean something. Now, I know what you're going to say. Your answer to that would be fuck the brand split and keep them all as one brand.
well,
Which,
ideally.
if you do that, then yes, your argument holds true. You don't need two belts. But if you are going to do the draft, you're going to do it the right way, and you're going to keep the brand split, then it makes sense.
Okay.
And then you can't sit there and shit on the belt and how much it means nothing to you. But then say, but that's not to take away from Mark Henry's reign and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? You got to kind of look at it both ways. And I get it, because you are true and true a traditionalist, and that will never change with you. And I get it. And that's why we love you and love you having on this show. But I don't know, man. I think like things need to change with the times.
I'll tell you this. All right. I will agree with you that having,
holy shit,
if there, and it's regarding this situation. Okay. You know, and maybe I'm totally disagreeing with my own thing, but when you bring up the brand split, right? And you said that if we're going to do the brand split, like, and this has always been my argument, and yours too. If you're either going to do it fully or don't do it at all. Don't half-ass it. So in that respect,
100%.
In that respect, if they're going full brand split and they're not going to touch beyond like the, you know, the big four, maybe that both brands are at or whatever, you know, beyond that, or the next draft or whatever.
See, but that's where we agree too, because I think the only time you should have any of the superstars cross branding is when you're talking about one of the big four, which are typically joint pay-per-views. Yeah. Then that makes sense.
Especially the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, those two specifically.
So we got David Rosca over on YouTube. Yeah. Trish Stratus is the modern day Nadia as a second perfect 10 for a reason.
You remember Nadia Comaneci from the Olympics? She was a gymnast, I believe. Okay. She got a perfect 10. Yeah, like listen, the guy's not wrong. Trish is. I was talking about this last week.
He's not wrong, but I don't know what Trish has to do with this particular conversation.
I mean, listen, I think some people are just have Trish on the brain.
A perfect 10, then I'd agree.
Yeah, dude. But like I said last week, if she didn't retire or whatever, or take all that time off, and she's so good now, just coming back, imagine how good she'd be with like an extra 10 years of wrestling. Like she'd be up there as like the Jericho of the women's division, just somebody you could just constantly use.
I mean, listen to what you're saying. Look how good she's looked even without having those 10
I know.
I mean, listen, she hasn't looked like, you know, amazing, but she, you know, for what, you know,
but Trish is cutting promos
off, she looks great. Well, the promos have been great.
Trish hasn't cut, like, when did Trish ever cut good promos? But
I shouldn't say that. They're not great, but they're good.
But they're good for Trish. Like, so David, with your Expos avatar there, you know, I wish the Expos, I have a soft spot for the Expos, buddy. But going back to this world title thing, I really appreciate Steve. I appreciate both of your guys' opinions. Steve, because he's being so optimistic that they're going to stick to this brand split when there's been 20 years of evidence that shows that they stick to it for 6 months and then they don't give a fuck.
Yes, but here's the difference. If we are to believe what we hear, and I want to believe it, so I'm going to go with it. But if we're going to believe what we're hearing, the draft officially starts Triple H and his era of whatever this is going to be. So I think if anyone's going to stay true to the brand split, I do think it'll be Triple H, or at least I fucking hope so.
Yeah, but okay. So the other problem that I kind of have, which I see where both of you are coming from, with the world heavyweight title, and Eric didn't take as hard of a stance. I'll take a harder stance. There was always one world title. When there were two, there was always one world title that was treated as more important, whether or not it was intended, and both titles are supposed to be equal.
And it wasn't always the WWE title.
Exactly, because there were times when Triple H or John Cena had the big gold belt, and then they were the important one, and the WWE title was kind of in the background. Like, it just depended on who.
Or sometimes it depended on which title was on Raw.
Right.
Also.
You also, guys, mentioned something about Gunther, which I think the thing I was going to bring up as I was like kind of taking mental notes during your rant, Eric, was back in the day, when they had the A and the B tour. This was back in the 80s. Hulk Hogan would work the A tour with the world title, and then Macho or Warrior or Steamboat or Piper or whoever, Hart, whatever, Perfect, Texas Tornado, would take the Intercontinental title to the B tour. So I think it would have been such an interesting thing if they had obviously they have faith in this Gunther guy. He's been Intercontinental title champion for a long time. He's held the title for a while. Make that the prestigious title. Make just Roman, wherever he goes, the world champion is on that show, and the other show has another guy that hasn't been pinned in fucking forever, and then whoever beats him is a big deal, and that elevates the world. When you're talking about Roman Reigns elevating the world titles by holding them for so long, and Gunther elevating that Intercontinental title, I don't think we need another belt. Like, the complaint about AEW is that there's too many belts, and now WWE just comes out with another belt, and everybody just seems fine with it. I don't understand. It seems like overkill.
But
Either
it was
split-
a way to split the belts from
But it
Roman. This has
also-
been an ongoing debate. How is Triple H
Well,
going to
okay,
do it?
but we
How are
don't.
they, you know,
And again, I guess me and Eric are old school fans. If there's a world champion, there's a
I'm
world
an old
champion.
school fan.
You
Don't get
had
me
two
wrong,
belts. But you had two belts, and then you put them together. And Roman's like, you had two belts as recently as like
and now you're
a
kind
year
of adding
ago.
a third one in a way,
Right.
or at
Well,
least a physical
no,
belt.
but that's why I said before. I think they should figure out a way to merge.
Oh,
the
yeah,
two
and I
that
definitely
Roman
I think
has.
they are.
Definitely
To your
agree with
point,
that.
I think they are going to take maybe the color scheme, because one's black and one's blue or whatever it is. They will
Right.
merge the colors and kind of make a
That's what I'm thinking too.
you know.
I just
Wolfpack.
I just I don't know. I feel like, I mean, listen, I'm an old school fan too, but I think if you stay true, I'm going to keep saying it. If you stay true to the actual brand split, then two belt world titles make sense. If the draft is going to mean shit like it has, then yeah, then there's no fucking reason to have two world titles. And well, we'll get into Gunther, but well, hold on. We also David again on YouTube. Trish Stratus had a perfect 10th moment, winning her 7th women's championship on September 17th, 2006,
Jeez.
making Lita tapping out with a sharpshooter on
Mhm.
Nadia Comanche's 30th anniversary. Oh, okay.
I see what he's saying. So in 1976, Nadia Comaneci got a perfect 10 in the Olympics, and that was the first time somebody had scored a perfect 10. And then 30 years later, September 17, 2006.
I'll tell you what, though.
Wow.
Wasn't that in Toronto?
It was. I don't know.
That was
Listen,
a-
I don't know
that
how
was
this
a
guy is
moment.
retaining all
I remember
this stuff.
Trish's outfit. I
I'm
remember
impressed.
her bowing at the end after she won the title. That was a great moment.
Yeah. I don't know how David's like Mr. Sports Facts down here.
Yeah, God bless
with
you,
his-
David. I give you a lot
Yeah.
of credit for retaining all that, man. But welcome to the show, man.
I
We
could have told you.
appreciate it.
I could have told you about Lita and Trish wrestling. I couldn't have told you that Nadia Comaneci won
Now,
got a
Vince,
perfect 10
was
by
that
1976.
before? I don't know if you'd know this, but was that before or after the movie called 10, aka Perfect 10, came out with Bo Derek as
Oh,
the lead?
I'm
I
sure
don't-
David will be able to get that information.
yeah, I
for
know,
sure.
right? Oh my God, he's gonna
Either
come in
that
with
or
notes on it.
running.
10 with Bo Derek. That's a pull from back in the day. My goodness.
So I don't know, man. I think we're gonna just always disagree on this topic. I think at the end of the day, it's gonna depend on how this goes, right?
Yeah.
We got to
And I
see
definitely
if
agree
the
with you,
draft is
though.
actually
Right.
gonna be a draft, and
Yeah,
it's
I
gonna.
definitely agree with you though on the brand split thing, and if they're going to go full force on it and make a commitment.
Well, that's really what it boils down
In
to.
that case, yes.
They have
However,
to treat it
when it
seriously.
comes down to the whole thing with the, like, they said, okay, USA wants its own world title and this and that. If Roman's going to stay on SmackDown, we also don't know officially yet, because Triple H said whichever brand Roman is drafted to. Doesn't necessarily mean he's staying on SmackDown. He could go to Raw. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. But when it comes down to the two world titles thing, one last thing I'll say is when you have two, it's just okay.
I know what
I'm
you're saying,
sorry.
Eric. Somebody ends up being the second place
Yeah,
when you have two world titles.
But
Well, I will say this, and Eric pointed this out before, and I do want to say this is something that I do agree with. That Cody definitely should not win this new belt. You're right. He does need to
yeah,
beat Roman.
yes,
Could you
because
imagine?
it completely undermines the whole Cody story.
Well, it does, but I will say this. If anybody is going to be able to bring prestige to that title, it would be Cody. I mean, look
Okay.
at what he did. Look at what he did when he won the IC title and brought back the white strap and brought prestige back to that title. You know, somebody, I think somebody said that nobody's brought prestige to the IC title like Gunther since Dolph Ziggler, and I don't think that's
the
right.
Miz.
I think the one that gave it the real prestige was Cody.
Yeah,
When
and
he's
then
rough
from
acting,
there,
though.
right?
that
You know, that
Cody,
was a big deal.
But yeah, I would definitely put Dolph and the Miz in that category too, as far as
Oh, for sure.
important intercontinental
Absolutely.
champions in the modern era.
Right.
And I do want to get more into Gunther, and I do want to get more into Raw, but there is something else that I do want to talk about, and I've been itching because I want to know what everyone thinks. So apparently, CM Punk
I knew.
not only took a flight from Florida to Chicago with a bunch of the boys from WWE, but apparently was backstage and even had an encounter with Triple H. Now, everything I'm hearing is that he was also escorted out.
Yes, asked to leave.
So, what are we thinking? Is Punk, was he just there to say hello? Or do you think he was talking to Triple H about wanting to come back, even though everything else we're hearing is that he's on his way back to AEW?
I think it's more about trying to mend fences with AEW, you know, and hopefully
by going to the WWE locker room.
Well, just to go to there and say, look, I can make up with these guys. They can make up. You know, it could be a mutual thing.
Right,
let's hope we can do the same in AEW as well.
Well, everything I'm hearing is that they kind of already did that because they're working on his big return in Chicago.
Right, they've got a United Center show booked. They haven't announced the name yet, but apparently a name has been decided on, like a special name for that.
But do
episode.
the Bucks and Omega and/or Page want to work with Punk? Are they willing to? Because I heard reports that they weren't, so I don't know.
I mean, listen. At the end of the day, are they going to have a choice? At the end of the day, if Khan wants them to work together, they're going to work together. They're professional.
Right.
It's business at the end of the day.
If Edge and Matt Hardy could work together after that whole fucking business, anybody can put their shit behind them.
Exactly, man. Like, and
How many years did Savage and Liz, after they divorced, work together?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But I also think that if they don't want to work with him and they just want to put Punk, like the idea is that Saturday night's show is going to be Punk show, and like it'll be Punk and Jericho, and that'll kind of be a nice way to get the Jericho Appreciation Society kind of off Dynamite to another program and have more time on your main show for some younger acts, some different acts. It's not the worst thing in the world to have a soft brand split like they're planning if you're going to use, because there's a bunch of people that they're on the level just below TV ready, or they've been TV ready and have been sitting backstage, that if you have another Saturday show, where's like Hikaru Shida been? You could put her on the show. Where's like Angelico been?
I don't think
put
they
him on
need
the
more
show.
content,
You know what
honestly,
I mean?
but that's just
I don't know if they need more content, but we're certainly getting it.
But regarding that soft brand split for AEW, that's what I thought they were going to do with the Ring of Honor situation.
Yeah, that's actually very hard brand.
But
So, I mean, there is crossover, but
is that going to end up getting its own thing or its own show, or
he's looking for it. I don't think he's found I think he assumed that HBO would just go for it, but also I feel like maybe there's more to this All In situation, because it sounds like All In is not going to be a pay-per-view. It's going to be streamed on HBO Max.
Not to necessarily want them to copy from WWE, but I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind a draft in the way like AEW and Ring of Honor would be kind of cool. I'll be honest.
I don't hate the idea of a draft. I hate the idea of a draft that's not stuck to, because we've just seen,
and that's ultimately our main.
It always devolves into, well, shit, Roman Reigns is on SmackDown. They're getting 2.5 million people. We need to put them on Raw because we've only got 1.5 million people. So there, you get to a point where you merge the rosters any fucking way. So it's either you really have to have a hard brand split and build up your superstars on each individual program as important as each other. And you have to make somebody feel as important as Roman, if that's possible. Or you say, fuck it, we have one world champion, we have one roster, we're one company. What kind of sense does it make that the two TV shows like are different teams? Like, I don't
Well,
know.
like when they bought WCW, right? And
Yes.
I know that whole thing failed initially with the whole Buff Bagwell match and the that first Nitro on Raw thing, and I think maybe that was the idea to have a separate WCW
It was
brand, which
supposed
they
to be
ended up kind
WCW,
of
yeah.
doing anyway with the brand extension. But I feel like I would have been more on board with multiple world titles if it was treated as if it wasn't under the WWE umbrella.
Yes, that's the thing.
That's more so my issue.
I was thinking about this last night, Eric, where there was a rumor going around, and again, this was a question asked to an executive that didn't even realize that AEW was a thing and didn't even realize that TNT or TBS had AEW programming.
Well,
but
somebody went through that a lot too.
Yeah, so. Somebody asked this former executive from Turner or from Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns Turner, and they're like, "Hey, do you think they would be interested in WWE since it sounds like there's stuff going on, with the contract, even though they've agreed to sell to this UFC Endeavor deal." But they asked this question about, would they be interested in acquiring rights deals for WWE, them being Warner Brothers Discovery? He said, yeah, I don't see why not. You'd at least take a shot at it. And even if you have one wrestling company and you can get the rights to the other one, in my head, I'm like, this would be such an opportunity to have a true brand split. If one company had the two true wrestling companies kind of under its television channel umbrella,
ooh,
Tony Khan could just have WCW. Could you imagine if they were owned by the same company or had the rights in the same company? It could be Tony Khan's WCW against Vince McMahon's WWE or Triple H's WWE.
That could be interesting.
That would be but I know it's not going to happen, but it's a fun experiment to think of.
I mean, shit, the potential is unreal. But
even as it
but I do think it would be more impactful.
Yeah.
If it happened now, the way things are, as a true forbidden door.
Yeah.
Because once they're under the same umbrella, it's almost expected that it's going to happen.
It wouldn't feel as special, right?
So the shock value is gone. But if we're sitting here and we tune into Night of Champions and Seth Rollins is in the main event to wrestle for this brand new title, and all of a sudden Adam Cole's fucking music hits, and you're getting Adam Cole, Seth Rollins, you're having a holy shit moment that you wouldn't get if they were under the same umbrella.
Well, look, back in the day, the territory days, right? But with the three main companies, WWE, NWA, and AWA, they would have these like world champions of each show kind of like do these all the shows, they would say it would be, for both titles, but it really wasn't. They would end in like a double, count out or whatever, or a time limit draw. But they would have matches like Backlund versus Race, or Backlund versus Flair, or Flair versus Martel, or Bockwinkel versus Race, or something like that. They had big deal things like in that way. I mean, shit, fucking Roman Reigns versus MJF. Holy fuck.
You've had in the past NWA champion versus WWF champion, like back in the 70s and 80s. But you know what they do, no matter who it was, whether it was like Billy Graham against Dusty Rhodes or whatever the matchup was, it ended in like a double count out or a double DQ. And I know people would kind of be unhappy with that nowadays. Right, or a time limit draw. I think a time limit draw, if you had two world champions that could go and do 60 minutes, yeah, dude. And
just imagine, right? You're sitting there watching a pay-per-view. Charlotte Flair comes out. Doesn't have a match. Comes out. Cuts a promo. And Miss Monet shows up, but under the AEW umbrella, because there's a good chance now that may happen after her extension in New Japan if she wants to go. I mean, could you imagine? And then you rekindle Sasha and Charlotte, but now Sasha as Mercedes Moné or whatever the fuck.
How much more would it mean at this point, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, there's just so much potential, but I think it's just a wet dream. I don't think it'll ever fucking happen.
I think so.
You know, I think there's better of a chance if Triple H is running shit for that relationship with Tony Khan. But if Vince McMahon even still has a little bit of a hand in it, I don't think it's.
He was sending in changes from his home in Stamford or where Greenwich or wherever McMahon lives. He was sending
But he
email.
wasn't at a Gorilla. That's an improvement.
Yeah, but he still sent like, you know, he's still got his thumb in the pie, man.
What,
He's
though?
always gonna have his
I'll
thumb in the
tell you
pie.
this. Even at worst, at Vince's worst, when he does stuff like that, it's still better than the last, like, some of the final days of WCW, the way that shit was running.
Well, that's not even a comparison.
I mean, yeah, when you've got Vince Russo,
when
just
you've got the whole
booking
locker
your
room
show
apart
into the
as the
ground.
NWO, where are you going?
I mean,
I mean-
it's you know, to get, I'll give credit where credit is due, and not trying to blame Russo for everything. Although once he came, everything did turn to shit, but it was already turning to shit before he came on board anyway.
Yeah.
Just remember too, he wrote shit. He didn't have the final say in anything.
No. I mean, there was
you
a
gotta
lot of
place
people
as
on
much
the
of that
ladder.
blame
No, it
against
wasn't
Eric
just him.
Bischoff.
Right. No, Eric Bischoff
you know.
had a say in it. That Brad, what's his name, had a say in it. Everybody had a fucking say in it. It was
Well, that was
it
the
was
problem. Too many people
by
had to
committee.
say
Right.
also.
It was death by committee. So
What was that, Brad Siegel?
Brad Siegel. Yeah, but like think about it though. WCW at its height, when they were selling those pay-per-views and those video games, it was branded as WCW versus NWO.
Well, wasn't that Bischoff's initial?
Well, NWO had their own commercials, and
they were gonna be, and that was the original, I think, idea for a brand split.
Right. I think that's what Bischoff wanted to do, and that's why Thunder was eventually created.
Yeah.
To, you know,
well, remember they tested out. They demolished the Nitro set one night, and the NWO took it over, and then all the signs got replaced to say NWO Monday Nitro.
And look, you know, let's be honest. There were certainly enough guys in the NWO at this point, especially '98, when there were two fucking factions of it, that they can create a whole new brand. For
Yeah,
it,
but they did
know?
like remember I think it was Uncensored '96. And it was all NWO versus WCW matchups, and like Nick Patrick had to ref every match because he was the NWO
sold
ref.
out, I think the first sold out.
So it was sold out. Yes, it was sold out, and they had that terrible competition with all the old ladies and their floppy titties as like who was going to be an NWO girl, and they were all like 50-year-old truckers. Like it was a mess. So I think they saw the train coming down the tracks. They're like, we can't do this, so they backed off on the idea. And WWE did it again. They were supposed to say it split. Instead of WCW and NWO, it was supposed to be WCW was supposed to take over Nitro, WCW was supposed to take over Raw and call it Nitro, and then WWF was supposed to take SmackDown, and they backed off of that too because of, again, we talked about a Buff Bagwell versus Booker T with Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson on commentary in front of a WWF crowd in the Northeast. They shit all over that match.
There's just a myriad of reasons why that
whole
thing
now
was fucked.
I think now, and it doesn't have to be Flair. It can be somebody else that's WCW adjacent. Arn is still around. I'm like, as if he's now with Wardlow, so it's not, you know, breaking him off from AEW would be maybe something he would or wouldn't want to do. But imagine taking Arn or Tully or somebody who's involved with WCW and coming out there and just making SmackDown, you know, is now WCW. And then it makes sense. You've got the show is WCW. You've got something that looks like the big gold belt. It's not, then you've got a definite split. Your world champion you don't have a WWE undisputed heavyweight champion and then a WWE world heavyweight champion. That don't make no sense because one belt says it's undisputed.
WCW to them is dead now.
I know it is, but there has to be or what about NXT?
Vince, to your point, it doesn't necessarily have to be WCW that name, but you know, it could be any name. But like
three letters. Give me three different letters that aren't WWE.
See, that's why let's real quick. The black and gold era of NXT, right? When it was really good before the 2.0 bullshit and whatever it is now.
Right.
At that point, Raw and SmackDown still seemed like fairly similar shows, whereas NXT had its own identity. Even ECW, when it was a third brand, it still had its own somewhat of a separate identity, whereas Raw and SmackDown were kind of interchangeable, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I just,
changing.
I
I
think
agree with you, Eric.
identity and separation in that respect
Right.
is,
Even if
what I'm
all
getting
right.
at.
So how about this? What if they bought what if Triple H bought the NWA from Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins and then came out and said that Friday night is NWA SmackDown or whatever the fuck, and it's the NWA title instead of the WWE title. I know it's another dead promotion, but I'm just trying to this is a thought experiment. I'm just trying to think of what different ways they could do it other than having two WWE World Championships.
I mean, ultimately, that's what it's going to be. It's never going to change.
I know. All right. So back to
Yeah.
this Punk thing. Part of some of the speculation. Here are the couple things that I've heard. One is that this is true. Once whatever injury time is tacked on from the surgeries and all that, Punk's technically going to be a free agent. So why wouldn't he go and talk to Triple H and see what they would offer or if they would offer anything? The second theory is that, and this is, I think, what Vince McMahon believed, he's an AEW superstar coming backstage at Chicago at a WWE show to create buzz for himself and create buzz for AEW to promote his return. And the third one I thought was way more interesting. And it was that as part of his healing process, that Punk has enrolled in some sort of therapy or counseling, and he is going around to different people that he needs to apologize to or feel he needs to apologize to make those apologies. He said some not so nice things about Triple H. He said some not so nice. Right,
He
that's what
said
it
some
kind of
shitty
sounds
things
like.
about Miz too, I believe.
That exactly. He said that thing
So
about
that makes sense.
right. So he could be back there making amends to those guys as okay, Triple H, I said this 10 years ago. Miz, I said this 4, 5, 6, however many years ago it was, and then work your way up to the Bucks and Kenny and all those and Hangman and go, okay, I had to go atone for all these other things in the past, and now I'm making my way up to you guys, and I apologize. And maybe
that's why I brought that up. Yeah.
Maybe that's the final step, and maybe this really is, it's so hard because Punk is a weird guy to try and get a read on. I don't think anybody can accurately predict CM Punk's behavior aside from CM Punk himself.
That's fair.
So I can't tell you what his intentions were, but it would be awful nice if the intention was I'm making a good faith effort to apologize to people that I've had conflict with, and going and patching up these old wounds, and then going on to patch up the fresh wound. That would be so cool. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but that'd be very cool.
Because didn't Punk have more of it? Wasn't it more of an issue with Triple H than with Vince anyway?
He had an issue with all of them because, the Miz.
I mean, at least until he left. I mean,
yeah, I think he did have more of an issue with Triple H, and then I think he had a problem with everybody because he got FedExed a release on his wedding day. So, at one point,
the whole stuff he had with The Rock. Although, if you've seen recent interviews, CM Punk shoot interviews, he absolutely loved working with The Rock and that whole thing.
Yeah, that's true.
He was just mad he never got a WrestleMania main event out of it. And you know what? He's not wrong. He should have got a WrestleMania main event out of one of those years. He should have been a WrestleMania main event.
I don't necessarily disagree, but at the same time, he took his disappointment to a whole nother level. Listen, there was a lot more behind it. There was the staph infection, making him work. I mean, there was a bunch of shit, and then firing him via
and
FedEx.
He was world champion.
Wedding is bullshit,
right? But being champion for 434 days and then not really being. This was another one, not really being the focus. He was champ, but then who was the focus? It was Rock, it was Cena, it was everybody else but Punk. It was the Shield. You know what I mean? During his last run, he was the world champion, but he didn't seem like the most important person on the program.
Here's a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
He belong in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Okay. I agree.
I think Punk is a Hall of Famer for the pipe bomb, winning the title, and leaving and taking that picture of the title in his refrigerator. I wish they kept that going longer, because there was a way to have Punk years before this Forbidden Door shit take the WWE title to Ring of Honor, take the WWE title to Japan, take it to independent promotions, and you could have had Cena or Rey Mysterio or whoever won that tournament as your world champion. But Punk is in the background with the real belt, defending it at supposed real wrestling shows, and then you're finally like, okay, we got to bring this guy back because he's on, it's the sports entertainment versus wrestling thing. Punk went out and worked wrestling shows, and Rey Mysterio or Cena was working Monday Night Raw. It would have been such an interesting experience to have Punk off TV with that world title for longer. But I understand why they didn't do it.
Yeah, because a lot of people did have a problem, and they thought that it was kind of too abrupt when Punk came back. Like they thought he came back too soon.
Too soon, for sure. I thought that for sure.
I do, but Steve, I did want to get into this Gunther thing real quick because I know we have other topics. My main focus on him was, do you guys think that he should and or will break the Honky Tonk Man's record as Intercontinental Champion?
Yes, I think he should 100%.
Okay.
He is another one that I
can
confidently say he is the greatest Intercontinental Champion of the modern era.
Yes.
He's
I think Santino Marella would disagree.
He's even defending the title and sending his goons back. So he wrestles himself. He's winning clean as a heel. The guy's an animal, and he's had some fucking bangers. I can't
most
say
recently at WrestleMania.
Oh, what a match! I mean, it's just everything. Even recently, him and Xavier Woods, fucking great match.
Yeah,
and I'm all about Gunther. He's fantastic. I mean, even just everything. Look at his body transformation. This guy's the real deal. He's just a great villain, and he backs it up in the ring. He's hard hitting.
I think he's what they envisioned Vladimir Kozlov to be. But
for sure,
I'll give you that.
Vince has been looking for this guy for 30 years. Yeah. He hadn't like every time he gets a big guy, he's like, I'm gonna book him like Andre, and nobody can work like Andre. And I'm not saying that he's Andre's height or anything, but anytime he gets a big beefy guy, whether it's Braun Strowman or the Kurgan, the Interrogator, or any of those guys, like they always kind of have the same kind of big. You can't knock him down. Oh, can we knock him down? Chop down the tree top. Chop down the tree. Oh, he took a bump. Yay! And then you eventually just lose to him. He's always trying to do it, but for whatever reason, none of them has stuck as well as like Big John Studd and Andre.
Yokozuna was one.
Yoko stuck.
They did it right.
Big Show is one of those guys. He goes, "Oh, we had the Giant from WCW. I can make him my next Andre." And he never he did, but he didn't. So this guy,
they portrayed him as Andre's son in WCW. They should have kept that going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who would have been mad at that, but that now you've got
Big Show with a slight French accent.
He wouldn't even have to. He'd just say he was born in the U.S. But, Vince would make him wear a beret and carry a baguette to the ring or something, I know. But what I'm saying is Gunther has the size of a big guy, and now we're at this point where guys of that size can work. Gunther has the work rate of a little guy. He wrestles like Chad Gable, but he's like if you took Chad Gable and put two other Chad Gables on his shoulders. He's
like the heel version of the way they should have booked Keith Lee.
Yeah. Yep. And there's a reason they call him the ring general, man. The whole thing fits.
General.
It's just and the group together. Yes, is it some cheesy Cold War throwback? We just throw all the foreign guys with funny accents together in a group. Yes, but this is.
It's not the League of Nations.
I was just going to say that, Eric. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's not the League of Nations. It's not a bunch of J-Brones. These guys can all fucking wrestle.
They're all great. They really are. The whole gimmick works. And what's amazing, too, outside of changing Gunther from Walter, they brought them up and they didn't change a fucking thing. Because it worked in NXT. And it damn sure works now on the main roster. And how many of the people get called up from NXT, they change the whole thing around and it fails. Perfect example like Keith Lee, Dijak, who's now back in NXT and thriving. just as an example. So sometimes if it's not broken, don't fix it. If it's over in NXT, it'll get over on the main roster. Just let it go.
Yeah, you got to give it, and that's
And
the
if
other
it
thing.
doesn't, then you repackage them.
Right.
But
Do we-
what's working?
Here's a question: do they, and this is more of a joke question, do they bring back the honkometer just for one night?
I would absolutely love if, as he gets closer
Call
to
it
breaking the record,
Gunther meter or something.
but it would be for him to get close to the record, and I know Santino's an Impact now, but they'll let him do it. A one night, Gunther's out there, he's open challenge. Santino comes out. And
That'd
he
be
put up the
amazing.
honkometer, and he shows Gunther's date, how many days or weeks he's held it and all that. And Santino goes, but I was the best Intercontinental Champion of all the times. And then you have Gunther versus Santino, and he beats him. And then one night you have fucking Honky Tonk come out, and he's too old to take a bump or anything. But you can still have, as he gets closer to Honky Tonk's date, maybe Honky picks a guy to try and go against him. Maybe he's there and Imperium intimidates an old man until somebody makes the save. But if they're going to break this record, it would be real cool to have Honky Tonk Man there at like Night of Champions or the pay-per-view or whatever it is, whatever date it is that he's going to break it, have Honky Tonk there and have some kind of interaction.
Yeah, but you know what? With that, all you have to do is have him front row.
Yes, if he was, I think him being
and then
front
you
row
pan
would
the
be
camera. They put the Honky Tonk Man, and then there's a little interaction during the match. Maybe something gets thrown in Honky's face, like beer or water or whatever. Something simple, and then at the end, if Gunther loses, he goes in and raises the hand of the new champion. But
right.
Yeah.
I think Gunther, you got to keep it on him.
I think he's gonna if Honky was involved, I think he would endorse for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think that regardless of who wins, they should be like Honky Tonk Man is presenting the championship to the winner at the end of the match, and then if the heel wins, they can still like kind of bully him a little bit.
And how much does that up the prestige of that title even more? Right?
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Sure.
There's a history to it, and I think Gunther's at the point, we were talking about this earlier. Gunther's the guy that reestablished after a couple down years on the Intercontinental title of it being prestigious, of it being the workhorse title. And
it means something again, and it's great. And he's constantly defending it. He has yet to get challenged and not say, right. No, you're not contender. Right away, he's
not
like, let's go.
Anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I just really hope they pull the trigger on Brock Gunther. I really hope
it's
they do
really
it.
weird that they did it.
Match.
Why wouldn't they do it, man?
That would be a banger.
Listen, I still ask myself why we never got Undertaker's Sting. So I mean,
and look, going by this whole IC title thing real quick, I do want to say that I kind of even back then, I kind of wish that Santino did break the record.
That would have been so funny. Santino was such gold.
Or get like one day close to it and then lose it, which would be hilarious.
Right, because he just lost it a couple weeks in. I think there were legs to that thing, the honkometer and all that.
3 months or whatever.
Right, and then he lost it like a Night of Champions or some shit. I agree with you. I think he should have gotten a lot closer and been like one day, a week, a couple hours, something where he loses the title right before breaking the record. Would have been a nice little story for them to tell.
Have him, actually beat the record.
Right, if they wanted to have him beat it, but like I feel like at that time they're.
But
like,
I think if there was a time to beat Honky Tonk Man's record, and if there was ever the right guy, this is the right time and the right guy with Gunther.
Yeah, and if you're establishing if this is the new Triple H era and all that stuff, you can establish, okay, by establishing Gunther in such a way with this record, you're establishing Triple H's philosophy on the booking and this new set of stars that's going to be promoted by this company that owns WWE and the UFC. And if Gunther's one of those guys that you want to feature, this is a way to do it. You give him a record, you give him a big celebration, you have the Honky Tonk Man there to pass the torch, and you treat it like a big deal because it is a big deal.
And for all we know, this could end up being a kind of somewhat of a transition to him to main event status, where could you picture Roman Reigns versus Gunther.
Oh yeah, I think people have been
You know,
clamoring
like
for
the
that.
way,
But
almost in the way like Austin Aries created Option C,
I got one.
gave up the X division, went for the world title and all that.
I got one.
what is it?
So the draft, right?
Yep.
Gunther and his Imperium get drafted to whatever brand. But the New Day also gets drafted back together on the same brand.
Yeah, but do we think
And then you
Big E's
have a
going back?
situation. Well, that's what I'm saying. What a great way to bring Big E back. Have another rematch, Xavier Woods and Gunther. Gunther wins. Now all of Imperium are beating the shit out of Xavier after the match. Big E makes his return. Now you have Gunther versus Big E, but then you could also have 3-on-3 with the New Day and Imperium.
I like that too a lot.
It's interesting because I was trying to think what would be a good Survivor Series matchup for Imperium.
I mean, look, I would love to see. I'm not going to lie, Imperium versus the Bloodline would be amazing.
Oh, that would be incredible.
Or
I
even,
think it would be.
a United Hurt Business or something like that. The
Hmm.
last time I remember that somewhat being teased was when they did Wyatt family versus Shield. I don't know if they ever even did a match, but their confrontation alone was phenomenal.
Yeah, you know what? I think
Just
we
tease it.
mentioned this. We mentioned this last week, but we're at a point. It's been a while. Bring back the Wyatt family.
Yeah.
Bring back Redbeard. Just call
And you
him
have a
Redbeard.
perfect opportunity with Braun because he's out on injury now. So
Braun's not. Yeah, Braun has a concussion
Right,
from
and he
the
wasn't really
match on
doing
Friday.
much of note anyway.
He was in Team Little Big 2.0 with Ricochet. That was like his thing, was he was doing this tag work. And it's like, I get it, that's fine, but like you'd think a guy like Braun Strowman, legitimately a former world champion, some guy that you pushed to the top of the card and was in main events, and now he's just in a happy to be here tag team with fucking Ricochet. Like, come on, man. So if you're gonna do that with him, put him in the Wyatt family. And Redbeard, I know we don't have Brody anymore, but Redbeard you could throw in there. You could probably grab a couple other guys and throw them in if you wanted to. But I think just a
and then put
three-man.
Little Miss Bliss in there.
Yes, okay, there you go. And then you round the group out that way, and you
Right.
finally, people
do
liked
something with her again too.
people really liked the pairing of Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss, and I don't understand why. And I know that was like a mixed match challenge thing, and they
It
only
was
did
a
it couple
cute
times on
little
TV.
thing because you could see that they were teasing feelings for each other.
And what's great is that it all connects because Alexa has this thing also with Bray, so does Braun, and the whole, it works.
Yeah,
that's true.
Everything
that's a deep
connects.
story.
That's what I mean. I love stuff like that.
Well, that's great storytelling when it all connects because it makes sense.
It all connects.
That's part of the problem. Sometimes things happen that don't make any sense. I'll give you a perfect example. What the fuck is happening that we're getting Omos Seth Rollins? There's no story. No build, no nothing.
Yeah, but now, so Dave Meltzer floated the rumor. I mean, not rumor. This is his speculation based on what he saw last night. And I'll see if you guys agree. He thinks it's going to be Seth Rollins versus Austin Theory for that new world title, and that Seth is going to be the first recipient, or first winner of that world title.
I don't agree with Dave Meltzer very much, but
I wouldn't hate
get on board with that, and I'd be okay with it. Seth Rollins, I think, is definitely the right man to hold that title, to be honest with you, at least right off the bat. I do. I mean, the guy is a workhorse, and he does anything they fucking tell him to do.
I'd like to put Drew in that conversation, too.
Yeah, but Drew is...
Drew's contract's up, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's
I
either...
still don't see him going anywhere, though.
And I don't think he would. But it's just... he did black out his Twitter. He's kind of like, not being very communicative right now. They don't exactly know nobody knows what's going on with him. People are kind of leaning toward it being a work, that he's kind of like, maybe the work, it's like a faux reflection of like his real thoughts of like, oh, we're gonna play this like I'm kind of frustrated, a little bit frustrated in real life, but
look,
then when I
they could add
resign,
a
I'll be this great.
nuance to his character, and
Or
Right.
it could be him using this as a way to try and get more money out of
a
WWE.
negotiation tactic.
Yeah,
right.
why
Correct.
not?
I mean, listen, Brock Lesnar did it all the time. You know,
Yes, we can take a little break, a little vacation, and then when he resigns, he can come back. But I think if he comes back, that's
he needs
another
to be a
guy.
heel.
He needs to be involved in that world title situation, though.
He
Too, I
also
agree.
he needs to be a heel. Also, he needs to turn.
You think so? Is it? You think
I
that's
do.
like? You think he's
I think it's
stale?
time. I do. I think it's time. I think he's got to stop playing out to the crowd. I think he's got to just be a fucking beast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree.
I wouldn't hate that either.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the
Ooh.
very top of the
Oh
hour.
my goodness! Holy crap, guys! That was, whew, that went quick.
Yes, it did.
Always goes quick when there's a lot to talk about.
That's the good thing about our show. Whether things in wrestling are bad or good, we always have enough to talk about.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And we're getting towards an AEW pay-per-view in May. We're getting towards AEW's All In. We didn't even really, Steve mentioned it very briefly that you guys mentioned, so Mercedes Moné lost her IWGP Women's World Championship last night or the night before, but also signed an extension with Bushiroad, who owns Stardom and New Japan. So, there is speculation that she's coming out, doing more in Japan, but also could potentially be coming out for the AEW, women's division, or coming out at All In maybe as a representative of New Japan versus an AEW wrestler. There's a lot to talk about that, there's so much happening every week. We don't, in an hour or so, we don't always get time to touch it all, but that's a good thing because then there's stuff to talk about the next week in case maybe it's a little slow. But I think that'll do it for this week. As Steve said, we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Tara, for hopping in the comments. I love comment. She censored herself, but she goes, "I don't give two shits about CM Punk." I love that comment from Tara. It's just so funny. Thank you
to David.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, David with his little tidbit about Trish winning a world title on the 30th anniversary of Nadia Comaneci's Perfect 10. That was pretty cool. So thank you for sticking with us, David. Be sure to hit the subscribe button there, David, on YouTube. If you're following us on social media, it's at TagMeADate, at TagMeADate, no spaces. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Steve's on LinkedIn. We're all over the place. It's mostly TagMeADate. The YouTube is TagMeADate. You type TagMeADate into the search bar. You'll bring up our channel. You hit subscribe. You hit the bell to get notified when we go live or when we upload a new video. The only one that's different than TagMeADate is our Twitch. It's twitch.tv/war report. That's all one word as well. Twitch.tv/WARREPORT. And we go live every Tuesday, 6 p.m. on Eastern Time. So adjust your clocks as necessary. We live stream on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and Steve's LinkedIn. We're all over the place streaming our show. The archives are on Twitch and YouTube. And if you prefer an audio version rather than a video version, you can always go to your favorite podcast apps such as Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Type in TagMeADate or type in The War Report. Our podcast will come up. If you're typing in The War Report, there are two wrestling podcasts called The War Report. But for ease of use, we have put in the description and the graphic for the podcast. We'll say TagMeADate. TagMeADate will be in the written description, Steve's name, Eric Vince, whatever. If you read the description of the podcast, you'll pick up that it's us. So just hit subscribe, and the audio version gets dropped to your mobile device or tablet or whatever within the hour of us going off the air. Ryan is nice enough to grab that audio and upload it for us, so it'll go right into your device, and you can take it with you if you're driving or working out or doing laundry or dishes or whatever it is you need to do to listen to podcasts. So, again, thank you for tuning in. The only one thing we want to say, I guess, to finish up is if you enjoy your time here, please spread the word. Please tell your friends. If you have friends who are wrestling fans who want a podcast to listen to, send them our way. We do it live. And if you have comments like Tara or David did today, your friends are very welcome to throw their questions or comments in. They kind of help fuel the conversation. So the more the merrier, guys. Just if you have friends that are looking for something new to listen to, send them our way. And that'll about do it for this week. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, for another edition of the War Report, brought to you by TagMeADate. On behalf of Steve and Eric, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you have a nice rest of your week.